Picture yourself in the middle of a tough practice, a high stakes game, the tension thick, focus high, yet it really feels like that weight is really bearing down on the shoulders. And suddenly a joke is cracked, and it's kind of more of a lighthearted moment. Okay. It makes the whole team laugh. Now, what happens next? The energy's shifting, the mood lightens up, and somehow everything feels just a little bit easier. And that's this humor effect in action. It's not just about a good laugh, however, it's really a tool to help elevate our performance, get those connections growing, create unforgettable memories. And today, we're going to dive deep into how humor can transform the athletic journey. Hey y'all, welcome to the Athlete's Health Deep Dive, the weekly episode where we get a mental performance theme of the week, dive deep into its insights for some tips, tricks to remember it, tools to apply it. And the goal here is to just give you some more value. The audience, athletes, coaches, parents, anyone giving you a glimpse into some longer form conversations around mental performance and their topics and how it can entail in our coaching. Ultimately, helping you out, get you using these tips, tricks, tools, adding them to your tool belt, your bag, and up your mental performance. At the end, maybe you do want to check out some of our coaching. But ultimately, with all that said, each week we have a theme and 3 to 5 tips, tricks, and tools that we dive into. And this week's theme is the humor effect. So without further ado, let's dive deep into the humor effect and learn how we can use it, humor, laughter, to level up our game. Tip number 1 is add humor to practice. Now, laughter in practice can just help us stay engaged. It can reduce that tension, right? Because, obviously, practices can be tough. They can be intense. There can be a lot happening, right? Now, when we can throw in just a little bit of this laughter, it can totally change the way we're perceiving this practice and what we are remembering, what we're taking home with ourselves. It really shifts that focus from pure grind to that enjoyable effort. And we don't always need to use this the whole time, right? But it's something that we can keep sprinkling in there, adding a little bit, and it gives, for examples, like funny names to make it easier to remember, things like these. And so this trick is going to be a comedy cue. And how we apply this is just using a funny nickname, right, to help the teammates remember. It's something that we can keep thinking back on, and it's something that sticks with us super easily. That is this humor effect in motion. The other thing we can do is incorporate kind of just a funny joke, a lighthearted joke during the practices, during the warm-ups, whatever the case is, so those tensions aren't staying as high. So then we can really roll with them and move forward using this humor effect. So I once heard a football team, and they named a couple tricks after some popular cartoons, and it was pretty funny, like the Roadrunner, Scooby-Doo. Okay, they were shouting out all these names, and it didn't just help them remember the plays, nor did it just have them have more fun executing them, but also it kind of threw the team that they're up against on a taken aback. They're like, what is all this stuff that we're doing? And this is just kind of an overall arching framework that we can use tip number 1 of adding humor to practice, whether it is to keep it a little more lighthearted, throw some laughter in there, more specifically this trick of a comedy cue, or with these tools to kind of have that funny nickname, right? Keep people remembering the names of the plays at practice, or to have the warm-ups have a little more fun, a little more jokes around it, so then we can level up the overall game. And we're going to go more in depth on that here now. With tip number 2, break the seriousness cycle. Now, this is that constant seriousness that we're talking about. And I totally understand the seriousness that we need, right? But it can also build some of this unnecessary pressure. Okay. And if we break that cycle with humor, we can start to really reduce that stress and still improve the performance, right? We can still keep it serious, but even with tip number one of sprinkling some of this laughter in there, some of these jokes, whatever the case is, all of a sudden it almost strengthens the seriousness ability of what we are reaching for even more. And I want to use this trick to kind of show it as a reference with this trick of laugh it off. And these tools are when things do feel too intense, we can take that moment to crack a small joke, lighten the mood, say a quick funny thing that's gonna make everyone laugh. And don't take this the wrong way, okay? It's not breaking the hard-edged pressure, the seriousness that we need for the competition. It's more so easing the tension, easing the robotic movements that we can go through so then we can play more fluid. How else we can do this is encourage the teammates to laugh at a small mistake during the practice. Keep them moving it forward, right? Because it's like a coach who noticed that the team was losing energy during the scrimmages, during the games. They this coach made it a habit to tell a light joke to break the kind of tension before the games, the matches, even the hard practices. Now, this way, the team's energy and focus was transitioned into what they were trying to do. They had that light joke, they had that moment beforehand where they can laugh it off, where they can see that bigger picture, where they are breaking the seriousness cycle and instead throwing a little humor in it, throwing a little more fun in their sports, and ultimately leveling it up. So, tip number two, break that seriousness cycle with the trick, laugh it off, and the tools when things are feeling intense, take a moment to crack a small joke, okay? Lighten the mood, right? You can do that and then you can get right back to that killer mindset. It is okay. And you might even throw the other team off for that loop, right? Because those teammates, and the other thing we can do is encourage those teammates to kind of laugh it off at that small mistake, okay? It's one thing to have that pressure and to be stone cold killer to get ready for it. It's another thing to have that start to break us down, which is why we're breaking that seriousness cycle. Tip number three, pre-game laughter for relaxation. And this is really a light laugh before a game. And this is going to help the athletes loosen up, focus better on their performance. And after going through this, it's actually made me think about how certain teams I was on in the past, the coaches actually told a joke a little story, a little moral every time before the big matches, before the big races. And it was exactly this. It was the pregame laughter for relaxation. Now that still gets us ready. It gets us locked in, but it removes those tensions a little bit. Okay, it's this trick of a locker room laugh, and it's a tools of sharing a funny meme, a photo, a video with the teammates before heading to the field, saying like, "Hey, this is going to be what the team looks like afterwards," or "This is what we're going to be doing afterwards once we can check off A, B, C, D, everything that we know we need to do." It can really set that relaxed, positive tone in the pregame huddle, whatever it is, that quick joke, that funny anecdote, the story that we can tell so we can perform at that ability we know we can do it. And one other story that I really like is a championship game, and a basketball coach, he was showing the bloopers of past mistakes, right? All the mistakes, all the kind of funnies, that blooper reel of the mistakes. And the laughter that fills it from looking at that, from watching it, shows then to forget about the nerves. Just set that winning tone instead. That is the winning tone, because then you go out there and we just know what we need to do. We know, look at all these other people who've made mistakes in the past. It's one thing to do it. It's just another thing for us to go out there and play. And that's ultimately what this tip number three of the pregame laughter for relaxation shows. If you see anyone out there, even during the toughest moments, right? There are locked in. Pre-game, they're pretty locked in. And even before the matches, they're locked in, right? That's what we usually see. Then again, there's always that time or two, and it's small, right? This does not have to be a big part of our game. Not at all, right? If we're trying to be serious about it, we can't be laughing all the time. But there's always those few moments where they are cracking that quick smile, making that quick joke. And that's ultimately why we're using this tip number 3 of the pre-game laughter for relaxation with the trick, the locker room laugh, and the tools, funny meme, funny video, whatever it is, the teammates before heading to the field, the court, set that relaxed pre-game huddle, that quick joke, funny anecdote, funny story to really send it off and make it last to be what we want it to be. Tip number 4 is laugh during the mistakes. And this is especially in games and then also review sessions, right? Laughing at the mistakes can really help the athletes avoid that overthinking, can move on quickly, right? We have to do something because we got to keep playing the game unless we get pulled out, which we might get pulled out eventually, but we're still in the game at that moment. We got to do something to move it on. I can just think back and keep thinking of everyone I've seen on TV in person where they make a mistake, they laugh, they give it a shrug, and they move on. And that's ultimately what we need to start doing, because it's one thing to get hung up on the game, right? On the mistake. And we know we made the mistake, but then it's a whole nother thing to really let it go. And that's why this trick is chuckle, fix, repeat. And that's all we have to do with these tools. Film review. Okay. Find the humor in the mistake and point out the ways to improve it, right? It's not just, oh, well, that's a funny mistake and move on. It's that's a funny mistake. We better not have that happen again. Chuckle, fix, and repeat it. Okay. Not the mistake, but the action. So then that mistake isn't happening. Now, if it is on the field, on the game itself, the play doesn't go as planned, laugh it off, refocus to the next one, right? Can you think about being on that plan, on that game the whole time? No, that's not a good way to go about it, right? We have to keep it going. We have to keep moving on. Why else would we be doing this? That is why this tip is laughing during the mistakes. Once again, you got your isolated moment in a sport, and you, like in the basketball, you got your free throw and you miss the free throw and you totally miss it, right? It is not even near it. Someone just says, you got a spaghetti arm, whatever the case is, and you're actually moving with it, you're laughing with it, and you're like, yeah, no more after this one though. And that helps you just kind of sit back and move on. Now, for some people, right, that might not work at all, but cracking that little joke makes light of the thing. Be like, all right, it won't happen again. Let's keep it going and come to terms, and it is all good and dandy. Tip number 4, laugh during the mistakes. Trick, chuckle, fix, repeat in the tools, film, or in game. Find the humor in the little mistake, find it being lighthearted, and learn how to not make that mistake again, and then you're set. That's all you have to do. Whatever mistake we got, laugh it off and move on with it. Lastly here, tip number 5 is build team bonds with humor. Now, what can laughter really do above, all of the other things, but certain things specifically? It can bring people together. How many times have you been thinking about you're in this spot or that spot, and if you can get a joke going, if you can get some people smiling, laughing, all of a sudden everyone is more together. And that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to be strengthening the team connections, which can just improve our trust, collaboration as the team unit on the court, on the field, in the match, you name it. And this trick is the humor huddle. And just like some other things that we're doing, we can think about some team building exercises that can just have a little hint, a little mix in of some funny stories, of some laughter that can be promoted from it, of some fun games that can ultimately make some laughs out of it. Maybe there is someone who is a little bit more of that joke teller. They're the comedian on the team. let them kind of work a little bit. Let them have some fun. Get that kind of group spirits staying high no matter what happens. Shed light on some of the bad mistakes, making sure it doesn't happen again, but making sure that the team can move on from it. All right. Now, I knew of a volleyball team, a group, who they made it a tradition actually to share kind of the funniest moment of the practices for the week. Okay, at the end of the week, they would share the funniest moments that they had. And that ultimately created a more cohesive unit. That team bond grew stronger because they would reflect on the week after some time had gone from some of the mistakes probably that happened, some of the bad moves, the moves that didn't really turn out as well, and just laugh on it. Okay. They'd build the bonds to make that humor, or build that bonds from the humor is what it was. And that's tip number 5 with the trick, the humor huddle with those tools, team exercises or team kind of units, a joke teller, something that can make those stories happen, share some laughter, and create that growth and that success. And ultimately, I love to break down kind of a summary of what we've talked about for the day. And I just want to make sure we understand first and foremost of the implementation of the humor effect. Now, this is a bias, and this is just talking about how if we start laughing, we're going to remember things more. We're going to have more fun. We can progress our journey better, faster, quicker, stronger, whatever the case is. This is what humor can do for our creation, and that is ultimately why we had these 5 tips, tricks, and tools for this week. I say that because, you could ask, why are we talking about humor here? And I know we waited till the end of this video, of this podcast, but that is ultimately why. So tip number 1 was add humor to practice. We were sprinkling it in, right? We got that comedy cue. Rename the plays, make some light jokes, learn from them, and be effective. Tip number 2, break the seriousness cycle. Laugh it off, okay? Use the humor to reduce the tension, stay focused, get that growth. Tip number 3, pre-game laughter for relaxation. We had that locker room laugh, right? A quick laugh before the game can really, really help us reduce those nerves. You can probably think about a time or two when that's happened. Tip number 4, laugh during mistakes. We got that chuckle, fix, repeat. Okay, find that humor in the errors and have it lead to that quicker recovery, that quicker improvement, that stronger performance. And lastly, tip number 5, build team bonds with humor. We have that humor huddle. Laughter strengthens trust and connections within the team, so then it can grow and perform at its peak ability. Ultimately, incorporating the humor into that athletic journey, that athletic routine is not just about having fun, right? It's about creating the memorable, the effective, the enjoyable, the pathways to that peak performance without that kind of just dread through high pressure, high performance, high pressure, high performance, but showing how we can sprinkle this laughter, this humor effect in here and level up the game. So go out there, laugh a little, and level up your game with the Athlete's Health Podcast, this week's deep dive. See you next week.